Nasser El Sonbaty wasn't just another massive bodybuilder on stage. He was something else. While most guys were chasing size and definition, he brought something rare to the sport: brains. The guy had degrees in history, sociology, and political science, and he spoke 7 languages fluently. That unusual combo earned him the nickname the Professor. And let's be honest, how many athletes have you seen posing on stage in a thong while wearing glasses? That was his signature look. Standing around 5 feet 11 inches and weighing over 300 pounds in the off-season, Nasser was a beast. But even with all that mass, he somehow managed to keep a shredded six-pack, which is practically unheard of. His physique was symmetrical, balanced, and way cleaner than the bloated look that many competitors were starting to show at the time. But it wasn't just the physique that stood out, it was his personality offstage. Nasser spoke clearly, gave smart interviews, and wasn't afraid to tackle controversial topics. A lot of fans looked up to him not just for his dedication to the sport, but also for his sharp mind and outspoken nature. And of course, that split opinions. I mean, was the bodybuilding world really ready for a guy who actually thought differently? Even though he never won the Mr. Olympia, he earned massive respect. He came really close in 1997. We'll talk about that later. But the truth is, Nasser built a loyal global fan base. He proved that you could be a top-tier bodybuilder and still use your brain. For a lot of people, that was seriously inspiring. How many athletes out there can truly combine muscle and intellect like that? On the flip side, that same combo also brought drama. The guy who impressed everyone with his intelligent takes was also the one who dropped harsh truths about the bodybuilding industry. And over time, that started to stir things up. Some called him arrogant. Others just thought he was brutally honest. But one thing's for sure, no one ignored him. It's kind of wild to think that someone so charismatic and knowledgeable ended up being labeled as bitter toward the end of his career. But was he really bitter? Or just saying the things others were too scared to speak out loud? That's a question worth thinking about. In this video, we're diving deep into the full story of Nasser El Sonbaty, from his academic roots to the bright lights of bodybuilding stardom, from epic stage moments to his sharp critiques of the sport's inner workings. So grab your pre-workout, because this is one of those journeys that hits both your mind and your heart, especially if you love the sport like we do. And at the end, I want to hear what you think about him. Nasser El Sonbaty was born on October 15, 1965, in Stuttgart, West Germany. His father was Egyptian, and his mother was Yugoslavian, so he grew up in a multicultural household that definitely shaped his open-minded personality and passion for languages. Early on, Nasser was different. He was more of a scholar than a gym rat, and bodybuilding wasn't even on his radar. His only goal back then was to improve his soccer performance. It wasn't until he turned 18 that he first stepped into a gym. His goal was just to strengthen his legs so he could get better on the field. But like a lot of athletes, once he started lifting, he caught the bug. He became fascinated with training and watching his body evolve. And that's when everything began to change. 2 years later, in 1985, he entered his first contest, the German Junior State Championship. He placed 6th. Not a big win, but enough to light a fire inside him. From that point on, he wanted more. He kept up with his academic life, but also started taking bodybuilding more seriously. And it didn't take long for the gains to show. While studying history, sociology, and political science at the University of Augsburg, Nasser was also sculpting a physique that made people stop and stare. The wildest part? He was getting props in the classroom and in the gym. It was like he was living 2 parallel lives. One as a scholar, the other as a rising bodybuilding star. On top of brains and brawn, he had another major strength. He spoke 7 languages fluently. That made him not just a standout athlete, but also a killer communicator. In a sport that's so visual, having someone who could actually articulate his thoughts was a game changer. It helped him crush interviews, connect with fans, and build a unique public image. In 1990, Nasser earned his pro card by competing in the IFBB. And from that moment on, everything changed. He was now among the world's best, and the bodybuilding world started taking serious notice. Then came the game-changing invitation. Joe Weider himself, the godfather of modern bodybuilding, asked Nasser to move to the U.S. and go all in on an international career. Starting in 1993, Nasser El Sonbaty began carving out an incredible path in the pro bodybuilding scene. His physique stood out for blending size, definition, and symmetry, a combo that was hard to find, especially in the 90s, a decade dominated by mass monsters. It didn't take long for him to go from being a European rising star to a big name in the US. And that wasn't by chance. It came from discipline, study, and a non-stop work ethic. Between 1993 and 1999, Nasser held his ground as one of the top bodybuilders in the world. We're talking over 30 shows where he landed in the top 3. Yep, more than 30 podium finishes in just 7 years. He won the prestigious Night of Champions and took home titles at Grand Prix events in Russia, Switzerland, and the Czech Republic. He dominated, no matter the stage or the country. In 1995, he made his first Mr. Olympia podium, placing 3rd. He repeated that in 1996, solidifying his place among the greats of his era. But that same year, a controversy hit. He was disqualified for using diuretics. Still, fans stuck by him, respecting the grind it took to reach such an insane level of conditioning and appreciating his honesty. Despite the setback, Nasser's reputation kept growing. His physique was seriously next level. He somehow managed to maintain a tight waist, even with all that muscle mass. That gave him a clean, aesthetic look, unlike many others who sacrificed proportions just to get bigger. His abs were always on point, symmetry was textbook, and his wide shoulders gave him a dominant but still pleasing stage presence. This rare combo of technical precision and visual appeal had a lot of experts calling him a future Mr. Olympia. He had the full package: mass, definition, stage presence, and charisma. Every time he competed, it felt like he was inching closer to that long-awaited title. And to the fans, it seemed obvious. The Olympia crown was within reach. But as we'll see, life doesn't always play fair. Staying consistently among the world's best for that many years is something only a handful of bodybuilders have ever pulled off. Nasser wasn't a one-season wonder. His rise was built on hard work, serious discipline, and a constant drive to level up. Ever heard of athletes who were always in the mix but never quite snagged the top trophy? That was Nasser's story. But 1997 looked like it was going to be different. It was supposed to be his year, the year everything would finally come together. Was this the moment he'd finally win Mr. Olympia? Let's get into it. 1997 was shaping up to be Nasser El Sonbaty's breakthrough. He was coming off a strong season, and his physique had never looked better. Massive, dry, symmetrical, with that tight waist everyone admired. On the other side was reigning champ Dorian Yates, who was clearly past his peak. Injured and visibly off, he didn't have the crisp conditioning that made him unstoppable in years past. This was Nasser's golden opportunity. When both men walked on stage at the Olympia, you could feel a shift in the air. Nasser looked flawless, even challenging Dorian in his strongest area, the back. While he didn't have the same freaky density, Nasser made up for it with clean lines, sharp posing, and a powerful presence. And most importantly, he was healthy and firing on all cylinders. Everything pointed to this being his night. But then came the letdown. When the winner was announced, it was Dorian Yates for the 6th time. The crowd erupted in boos. People were shocked. Heavy hitters like Jay Cutler and Ronnie Coleman later said, loud and clear, that Nasser should have won. Bodybuilding sites and magazines everywhere started questioning the judging process. For Nasser, it wasn't just a loss, it was a turning point. He didn't see it as a tough break. He saw it as a rigged result. In later interviews, he straight up said the outcome was manipulated. According to him, the organization was dead set on keeping Dorian at the top, unwilling to crown someone outside the IFBB's inner circle, especially someone who openly criticized the system. That sense of injustice hit Nasser hard. His relationship with bodybuilding changed for good. The trust he once had in the sport's meritocracy turned into skepticism and frustration. He started to view the Olympia as more of a political game than a fair competition, where backstage deals mattered more than the physique on stage. And little by little, That mindset pushed him further away from the bodybuilding community. Nasser's frustration also sparked a much bigger conversation about pro bodybuilding as a whole. Just how fair are the judges, really? How much do politics, contracts, and favoritism influence the final results? Dorian's win in 1997 isn't remembered because it was legendary. It's remembered because it left a cloud of doubt. And that cloud still hangs over the Olympia legacy to this day. But what about you? Have you ever seen an athlete give it everything they've got, overcome every obstacle, and still walk away empty-handed? Nasser believed he got robbed, and he wasn't the only one. So here's the question. Was he right? Or is it true that winning on the Olympia stage takes more than just an unbeatable physique? After that controversial loss in 1997, Nasser hit the stage again, determined to prove he still belonged at the top. In 1998, he once again delivered a rock-solid performance and took third place at Mr. Olympia. It wasn't the win he wanted, but it was still elite-level work. That same year, he also placed second at the Arnold Classic, keeping his name among the best in the world. But something was shifting, and it wasn't just physical. The competitive fire that once drove him started to fade. Years of extreme training had taken their toll, and the frustration with the system was wearing him down. Still, in 1999, Nasser had a huge moment when he won the Arnold Classic, beating none other than Kevin Levrone, another legend from that era. It turned out to be the last major victory of his career, and a reminder that he still had plenty left in the tank. But after that win, the downward slide began. Later that year, he placed just 6th at the Olympia. In 2000, he slipped to 5th, and from then on, the podium got farther and farther away. In 2001, he dropped to 9th. In 2002, he fell to 15th, a spot that would have been unthinkable just a few years earlier. It was the beginning of the end. In 2004 and 2005, Nasser made a couple more appearances at shows like the Night of Champions and the Europa Super Show, but the results were disappointing. He clearly wasn't the same. The pain, the injuries, and the mental burnout had caught up with him. Still, he always competed with dignity and professionalism, showing respect for the fans and for the legacy he'd built. All in all, Nasser competed in 53 pro shows and 13 amateur ones. He racked up 6 wins, 11 runner-up finishes, and 15 third-place trophies. That's a resume most athletes only dream about. And even without a Sando on the shelf, he made a lasting impact on the sport. In 2005, he officially retired. There was no grand farewell, no emotional speech. Nasser just quietly stepped away from the stage. Maybe it was because his relationship with bodybuilding was already too damaged. He chose to leave in silence, but fans never stopped talking about him. His name kept popping up in forums, magazines, and conversations about the sport's greatest legends. Even after he stopped competing, Nasser's presence never really faded. We'll talk more about that in the next part, but it's already clear his journey was intense. He reached the top, felt the sting of injustice, experienced the fall, and through it all, he stayed relevant. After retiring in 2005, Nasser could have taken the typical post-bodybuilding route. Guest appearances, seminars, signing autographs, staying on good terms with the industry. But nope, he chose a different path, confrontation. Starting in 2008, Nasser began giving explosive interviews, where he tore into the structure of professional bodybuilding. No filters, no sugarcoating, just raw, unfiltered truth. One of the most infamous interviews came via bodybuilding.com, where he went scorched earth on athletes, judges, even journalists. He mocked Dave Palumbo by calling him Jumbo Palumbo, taking a jab at his physique. He accused Milos Sarcev of having silicone calf implants, and even claimed Sarcev owed him money for steroids. He called Sean Ray a Napoleon-complex chihuahua and criticized Paul Dillett for having a physique full of empty spaces. And that was just the beginning. Nasser seemed to hold a special grudge against the people behind the scenes at Mr. Olympia. He accused IFBB judges of favoring certain athletes, especially those within the federation's inner circle. According to him, the 1997 decision that gave the title to Dorian Yates was the biggest robbery of the 20th century in bodybuilding. For some, that sounded dramatic. But was he really off the mark? His biggest complaint was that someone like him, a foreigner outside the political bubble with a freaky good physique, would never be allowed to win the Olympia. In Nasser's eyes, the show had stopped being about the best body and started rewarding whoever was most convenient for the industry's commercial and political interests. The craziest, or maybe saddest, part is that, despite his constant criticism, Nasser was still respected by many of his peers. Even the ones he publicly went after admitted his impact on the sport. But there was a pattern to his interviews. Whenever 1997 came up, everything changed. It was like that one loss left a wound that never fully healed, and maybe it never did. That bitterness ended up pushing Nasser further away from the pro circuit. He wasn't getting invited to events or partnerships like before. The industry that once celebrated him started to avoid him. A lot of people saw him as a difficult, bitter figure. But was he just venting what others were too scared to say out loud? Or did he let his frustration drown out everything else? Either way, his interviews left a legacy that still sparks debate. Some see them as bold and eye-opening. Others call them unfair and damaging. But one thing's undeniable. Nasser never went unnoticed. Even offstage, he kept stirring the pot and making people talk. Now, let's switch gears a bit, because Nasser didn't build one of the most impressive physiques of all time by accident. His training method was all about strict discipline and strategy. He followed the classic pyramid approach, starting with lighter weights and higher reps, then gradually increasing the load while dropping the reps. The idea was to warm up the muscle progressively until it hit full intensity. He trained each muscle group with laser focus. Nasser had dedicated sessions for chest, back, legs, arms, and shoulders, no detail overlooked. One of his standout habits was how often he trained calves, several times a week, a body part that many lifters straight up ignore. He also trained abs regularly, which helped him keep that tight waist everyone admired. His weekly split was super structured. Mondays were for back, abs, and calves. Tuesdays, arms and traps. Thursdays were leg day. Sundays were for shoulders, chest, and cardio. Wednesdays and Saturdays were rest days. During prep, Nasser kicked things into high gear. On top of his heavy lifting, he added long, intense cardio sessions, treadmill, stationary bike, stepper, sometimes lasting up to 50 minutes. He knew that every ounce of water retention could cost him a title, so everything had to be dialed in. He also kept his workouts varied. For chest, he mixed incline and decline presses with flies. For arms, it was dumbbells, easy bars, ropes, cables, you name it. Leg days were brutal. Free squats, leg press, extensions, curls. High volume, and reps adjusted based on how close he was to a show. Training with Nasser wasn't just a physical challenge. It was a mental one too. Another thing that stood out? His insane focus during workouts. Even at his size, Nasser didn't train sloppy or rushed. He was sharp, technical, and intense, always locked in on the movement, the contraction, the form. He proved that being huge doesn't mean you forget the fundamentals. Quite the opposite. Nasser's disciplined routine is a serious reminder. There are no shortcuts in bodybuilding. He reached his peak through sweat, patience, and consistency. If you're someone who trains regularly, ask yourself, how solid is your own training structure? Are you taking care of your technique, volume, recovery? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you think all bodybuilders eat the same, nothing but protein and barely any carbs, Nasser El Sonbaty broke the mold. His diet approach was, at the very least, unconventional, but it worked for him. In the off-season, while most guys were loading up on protein, Nasser did the opposite. 80% of his calories came from carbs. He believed that's what truly fueled muscle growth. During his mass-gaining phase, Nasser's protein intake was shockingly low, around 100 grams per day. Yep, just 100 G. And yet, he still managed to maintain a physique of over 290 pounds, packed with insane size and density. For a lot of people, that completely challenged the so-called ideal bodybuilding standards. It was only during cutting season, when he was prepping to step on stage, that Nasser would flip the switch. His protein intake could skyrocket to 400 or even 600 grams a day, while carbs dropped to around 250 grams. The goal was simple: hold on to lean mass while stripping fat, without sacrificing fullness or muscle density. It was a drastic shift in nutrition strategy, and it demanded total discipline. His meals were simple, no gimmicks, but super functional. He stuck with things like eggs, both whites and whole, brown rice, yams, grilled chicken breast, lean red meat, salads, and protein shakes. His meals were spaced out throughout the day, usually 6 times. Before training, a piece of fruit and a shake. After training, another dose of protein. Everything was timed to keep his body fueled without overloading it. His diet adjusted depending on his goals. In bulking season, it was all about fueling heavy training and growth. During cutting, it was precision mode, eliminating bloat and water retention. Nasser was meticulous about this process. He usually started his prep about 10 weeks out from a show, fine-tuning every detail along the way. One of the most fascinating parts? Even with this unorthodox approach, the results were there, right on stage. Nasser would show up dry, full, and absolutely peeled, despite eating way less protein than what most modern protocols preach. At the end of the day, results are what matter. Nasser proved you don't have to copy what everyone else is doing. If you've got consistency, strategy, and self-awareness, you can carve your own path. And all of that combined made the man a colossus. Not just in size, but in aesthetics and presence. During contests, he weighed between 270 and 280 pounds, already jaw-dropping. But what blew people's minds was how he could still show abdominal definition even in the off-season. He sometimes topped 330 pounds and still had visible abs. Back then, that was almost unheard of. He was one of the first bodybuilders to break the 300-pound mark, around 136 kilograms, while keeping proportion and symmetry. Nasser proved you could be a freak without sacrificing aesthetics. His massive, round shoulders became a trademark. That width gave him a powerful silhouette on stage, making his tight waist and full chest look even more impressive. His proportions were something else. Nothing on his body looked off. Biceps, triceps, chest, legs, back, all balanced. He never had that warped, bloated look some athletes develop when they chase size at the expense of harmony. And it wasn't just about size. Nasser knew how to carry himself. He could pose like a pro, showing off strengths and hiding weaknesses. He mastered the art of presentation, something that often gets overlooked. Because let's face it, having a killer physique means nothing if you don't know how to show it. That's part of the pro game too. Another thing that stood out was his muscle density. Nasser had that deep, grainy look, the kind of muscle that looks like it's about to pop through the skin. That comes from years and years of hard training, progressive overload, and crazy consistency. You can't fake it. And when he stood next to other legends on stage, your eyes just went to him. He literally stood out in every lineup. He also graced the cover of over 60 international magazines. His look was so iconic that it attracted photographers, sponsors, and magazines from all over the world. And it wasn't just about his size, it was about the presence. The complete package. A true colossus that blended muscle, symmetry, and brains. And let's be real, that combo is rare in this sport. In short, Nasser's visual impact was unreal. Whether he was competing or just showing up somewhere, he turned heads. And it wasn't just his physique, it was how he carried himself. He looked like he knew he was a living legend. And maybe that's why, even without a Mr. Olympia title, his name still commands respect and admiration among everyone who loves bodybuilding. But sadly, his time came. On March 20th, 2013, the bodybuilding world was hit with heartbreaking news. Nasser El Sonbaty had passed away at just 47 years old, while in Cairo, Egypt. The official cause reported was malaria, but rumors started swirling fast. Many believe kidney complications, worsened by years of diuretics and anabolic use, also played a role. It marked the end of an intense journey filled with glory, controversy, and reflection. Nasser's death came as a shock to fans and athletes alike. Even though he'd stepped away from the stage, he was still a big presence in the bodybuilding world. Always talked about, always remembered. The The impact was instant, and the tributes started pouring in. But just like his career, the tone was split. To some, he was a wronged legend who stood up to the system. To others, a gifted athlete who let frustration cloud his legacy. A divided legacy, just like the man himself. Plenty of fellow competitors remembered him fondly. Sean Ray, who had been harshly criticized by Nasser in interviews, still said he respected him as an athlete, despite their differences. Others mentioned how funny and approachable Nasser was backstage, which stood in stark contrast to the tough guy he came across as in public. It goes to show, like any human being, he had layers, not all of them visible to the outside world. The most surprising part? Even with all his attacks on the industry, many admitted Nasser had a point. He was one of the few who dared to say out loud what others whispered behind the scenes, calling out favoritism, manipulation, and shady politics in pro bodybuilding. Sure, he did it with bite, but his words sparked conversations that the sport needed to have. Throughout the 90s, Nasser racked up 6 wins, 11 runner-ups, and 15 third-place finishes across 53 pro shows. He made it to the top 3 at Mr. Olympia 3 times and won the Arnold Classic in 1999. And yet, ironically, he's often remembered for the one thing he didn't win, the Olympia title. But maybe that's what makes his story so powerful. Despite all the highs and lows, Nasser El Sonbaty's name still echoes through the sport. Whether it's a debate about the 1997 controversy, a reference to perfect proportions, or a discussion on ethics and politics in bodybuilding, he's always in the mix. His legacy goes way beyond posing trunks and stage lights. He was a thinker, a disruptor, and above all, someone who refused to accept the rules without asking why. Nasser's journey was more than just muscle and medals. He brought intensity, intellect, and the guts to go against the grain. His story forces us to ask some tough questions. Is being the best really enough to win? Or does the system sometimes decide who gets to shine? Those questions still hang in the minds of everyone who loves this sport deeply. He was a competitor who gave everything he had. He trained with discipline, competed with consistency, and poured his heart and soul into bodybuilding. And still, when it mattered most, he walked away without the victory everyone thought he deserved. Makes you think, doesn't it? How many times in life do we give it our all, only to feel like we've been robbed? That's why his story hits home for so many. His harsh words about the IFBB and the sport's backstage politics definitely split opinions. But they also opened people's eyes. He never held back, even knowing it could cost him popularity. And whether you like his style or not, that takes guts. I mean, how many people have the nerve to challenge the system from inside it? Not many. Nasser was one of the few. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Nasser got robbed at the 1997 Mr. Olympia? Do you agree with the things he said about pro bodybuilding? Or do you think he went too far? Drop your thoughts down below. I'm reading every single comment. This is the kind of conversation only real fans of the sport truly get. And your voice matters here. If you like this video and want to see more stories like this, hit that like button down below. It really helps the channel reach more people who live and breathe bodybuilding. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because there's new content every week, always bringing you the legends, the drama, and the behind-the-scenes stories you won't find anywhere else. And if you want to support the channel even more, consider becoming a member. That way, you help keep this content alive and high quality, and you get access to exclusive perks too. And of course, share this video with that friend who's obsessed with bodybuilding, or who needs to hear the story of Nasser El Sonbaty. See you in the next one. Big hug, stay strong in your training and in your mindset. Until next time,